You're listening to The Dating Den with dating and relationship badass and best-selling author Marni Batista. Every week, you'll get the raw truth from top experts and real people on the important dating, sex, and relationship issues you want to know about. So if you're ready for true talk that's authentic and unfiltered, and you're not afraid to be called out on your stuff, then you're ready for what's next.
The Dating Den, episode 38 with Raz Ingrasci. Don't have time to screw up love again? The fastest path to getting over your shit. Good morning, ladies. Well, it's morning for me right now. Welcome into my luscious dating den. I have a guest today that I have really wanted to have on the show since we started. And you are going to kind of be blown away by Raz Ingrasci. He is a UC Berkeley grad. He's been an executive, a consultant, and facilitator within the human potential movement since 1972. Along with being a teacher for the Hoffman Institute, he actually founded the Institute's Foundation in 1998. And for those of you who don't know, the Hoffman Institute has been a part of my personal transformation way back in 2006. The Hoffman Process actually is one of the most highly effective methods for people to heal and discover their true nature and live a more free, open, loving, and spontaneous life. And I sort of got that gift in 2006. And what you're going to love about Raz is that his passion for the Hoffman Process is not just professional, but personal. He is a teacher, and what is really amazing about him as a teacher and a human is that every time he connects with students and does this work, he learns at least as much as he teaches. He did the process himself in July of 1989. And just a little tidbit, when he did the process, he had three big takeaways. One is he knew his marriage would last, and he's been married for 35 years. So that came true. That he would be a great dad to his young children. And I happen to know his daughter, and she is a great person. And that he had found work worthy of devoting his life, and he has done that. And as a result, the Hoffman Institute and the Process and the Foundation have changed the lives of so many people. So I'm excited for you to meet my friend Raz. He's from the San Francisco Bay Area. He lives there with his wife of 35 years, as I mentioned, Liza. And he is going to take us through some basic foundation principle of the Hoffman Process, really, which is in such alignment to the work we do at Dating with Dignity. And so please help me welcome Raz to the den. Hey, Raz.
My pleasure.
So for those of you who don't really know, I was sort of like in a puddle on the bathroom floor, wondering how am I going to change my life? And I found out about the Hoffman Process, and it was pretty much the most inconvenient thing I could do was to go do this process at that time in my life. My kids were little. But I realized that if I didn't take a chance, I wouldn't ever give myself a chance. And as a result of that, everything in my life changed, from my work to meeting my husband to pretty much everything that's going on today. And part of that is the approach. And one of the most basic sort of foundation principles of what the work that's done at the Hoffman Process is around this concept of negative love syndrome and how it relates to our relationships and our parents' marriage. And so, Raz, start there and tell everyone sort of what it is and why it messes us up.
Okay. So Bob Hoffman postulated something called the negative love syndrome. Obviously, there's no such thing as negative love, but there is a syndrome by which we, with the best of intentions, with love in our hearts, we end up having the opposite of that. So we end up wanting to feel loved and connected, and we often get rejected and abandoned. So how does that work? And why does it seem to especially affect our most intimate relationships? I think anyone who's been in love has run into this, who's been hurt in love, who's inadvertently hurt someone else. And this sense of betrayal and abandonment that can just be so devastating and, is prevalent. We see it everywhere. And we must assume that, for example, every marriage starts out with people believing they're going to be in love forever and ever. And yet something like half of marriages end in divorce. And frankly, the rest of them, probably at least half of the rest of them, are not that good. And so the people are just, suffering it out or enduring. And so we have to ask ourselves, what is going on that can take the most beautiful of human emotions, the most beautiful and sublime of human feelings, love, and turn it into something that, can become a living hell for people and bring so much pain and even drive people to do horrible things. So Bob Hoffman called it the negative love syndrome. And essentially it's based on something very simple. And it is a recognition that we learned our most fundamental love lessons about love, what love is, what it means, and how to be in love and express love. We learned it from our parents in our very early childhood, and we have forgotten that we learned it. We've forgotten what the lessons were. Now, if you think about a child who is perhaps, just born, a child is bonded to its mother through, has an emotional bond, the parent-child bond. It's an emotional bond. Child has no intellect, can't do anything for itself physically. So children are 100% dependent on their parents for survival. And that dependency means that we have to experience being connected to them, to the person upon whom we're dependent for our life. We have to believe that they're going to take care of us. Any other thought that they're going to abandon us is just too terrifying for words. It means we're going to die. And so to make it very simple, although I could talk on this for the next half hour,
Right.
Whatever emotions were present in our family of origin up until about the time we were 10 or 12 years old, we absorbed those and we called that love. And we shaped our emotional selves, our emotional, just our emotional repertoire around that. So if there was criticism and arguing, if there was bickering and whatever there might have been, we can go into that a little later, but whatever there was, we took that on and we called it love. We had to call it love in order to feel connected to them. We couldn't say, oh, mommy's or dad, daddy is an angry, rotten guy. I'm never going to talk to him again. No, we had to find a way to accommodate ourselves to that. And then we grow up and, that's what love is. And so we have a homing device that's faulted, that's broken, that's got big flaws in it. And so we find ourselves attracted to someone who feels really good to us. We get into the relationship, and somehow, magically, that person starts evidencing terrible faults. And if you've been in a relationship deep enough, you start realizing that either you are behaving like one of your parents, and the person in the relationship is like the opposite parent that you really didn't like. So we learned there is no school about love. There is with Marni now.
Right.
But for the most part, what we learned from our parents about raising children, marriage and love, and also about the way we feel about ourselves. So that's just a little opening there, Marni. I hope I didn't take too much time.
No. I think it's really, really important. And the thing that I always want to teach, and it's really something that came from really learning all of this when I did my own Hoffman experience, was that, it's like, it's not our fault, right? Everyone is guilty, but no one is to blame.
Right.
Right. And so we just grow up, and what you said is so poignant. We have no other option but to believe that we are going to be safe. And then when things are not going that way, we make up meaning, right? So that we can continue to survive, and we try to get that connection. So I think that, what I really want everyone who's listening to really walk away with just this first little piece is that, it's not because you're bad or fucked up or flawed or you're missing the relationship chip. It's not like you're the one destined to fail at love. It's that, this stuff happened, and it's what you learned, and you don't even know up until now that you learned it, that it's a rule that's playing in the background. And I think just right from there, we can kind of forgive ourselves and say, okay, so I need to learn how to do it differently. So one of the things that I think is just a brilliant insight from the work that you do is that, and you alluded to this a little bit, is that we we experience love in different ways. And that it impacts our relationships. So if love is being a martyr, or if love is being a fixer. So can you elaborate a little bit on the many different ways that we experience love and then define it as adults?
Yeah, you actually hit on a couple of really important ones. I think that I want to add two things here. One of the things, before I answer your question, one or two things here. One is that one of the primary things that the Hoffman process does is allow you to get to understand, to become aware of at least a couple of hundred of what we call these negative love patterns, where we mistook negativity for love and bonded with our parents in their negativity, and then called it love. And so we identify those, and then we disconnect from them. We become aware of what they are, and we disconnect from them emotionally and physically, so that the Hoffman process works not simply by teaching you, how to be a more loving person. Our premise is that you are, underneath these negative love patterns, you are a loving person. And so a lot of our strategy here, our approach, is to become aware of and disconnect from the need for the negative love syndrome, so that you can live a more naturally open, loving, and productive life. Now, some of these types of things that we've seen, you said martyr, and there are various forms of conditional love. I'll be this way if you'll do that. If you don't do this, I won't do that. So there's conditions. And then there's transactional love, very close to conditional love, which is about all of love is a transaction. And I give this, I get that. If I don't get what I want, I don't give unconditionally. Real love, of course, is unconditional. So we've seen people become critical, bickering, fault-finding. You mentioned martyr, submissive, domineering, angry, secretive, manipulative. And, you find people in their marriages doing things that they don't do in business, they don't do in real life. So, with their friends. So someone could appear very, very wonderful or be very honorable in business, and yet in their marriage, they could be secretive, manipulative, betraying. And so we observed what our parents did in their marriage, and that's where we learned what marriage is. And one last clue I'll give you here is that a good place to start, it's not an absolute rule, but it's a good place to start, is that we most emulate our same-sex parents. And so a good place to start is, okay, assume I'm a lot like my dad. What was he like? And start looking at that. Or, for a woman, I'm like my mom. And so we either emulate them or we rebel against them. And if we rebel, we get the opposite. But it's equally inauthentic, because the goal, our real goal here in Hoffman is and for everyone, Marni's goal is not for us to be like our mom or dad or be not like them, but to be yourself. And as I said earlier, yourself is free, open, loving, and spontaneous, and to be able to reside in that love. And when it gets challenged, to be able to come back to it.
I think this is so huge. I know that when I was doing this work, I had this massive realization that I didn't want to identify with my mom, so I rebelled against it. And I was like, holy crap, and actually, coming into my authenticity, I get to choose and really understand that some of those traits are authentic to me and that I love them. And then sort of disconnecting from that and then saying, oh, well, I need to be more, in this way that's like my dad. And then finally deciding, wait, no, right? What the goal is to decide, I'm not my parents, I'm myself. And how am I going to get to know who I am and then put that forth out into the world? And what we talk about all the time in the dating den and dating with dignity is that's what's really attractive, is authenticity. So this is this very specific strategy to go in and become aware and disconnect and then rediscover and rediscover, I think is the important word here, your authentic self. It's buried underneath all this stuff. So let me ask you this, because you've been doing this, for a long ass time. And I know that you come across so many different strategies around, self-help, curing the crisis, so to speak. Why do you think that typically a lot of self-help modalities don't end up being as effective as something like the work that you do, which is to become aware and then disconnect and then really, fall in love with yourself?
Well, I think there are a couple of reasons. By the way, before I go on to that, I just have to comment that one of my big revelations when I was doing the process, I had been totally rebelling against my dad. And then in the process, working the process, I realized, oh, my dad had rebelled against his dad. And then I looked back and I saw that my grandfather had rebelled against his family and left Italy, immigrated to the United States now more than 100 years ago. And so I realized that my rebellion was programmed. It was inauthentic. It was just emulating my dad and my grandfather. And so that kind of shot a hole in my rebellion.
Yeah. But, it's not as fun anymore when you're not original rebel.
Right. So the self-help models largely are based on the idea that if you know what the better way of being is and practice it, you'll and put your will into it. You're willing, you make a list and you follow all these rules, that good things will happen. And it's also somewhat based on the idea that you can become aware of the ways in which you have been automatic, on automatic, autopilot, on thinking, unconscious, and that you can then say to yourself, okay, I'm an adult, I have free will, I don't have to be that way, I'm going to choose to be different. And so then we make a choice to be different, and it's based on our willpower, and willpower is just way overrated.
Yeah.
It is just way overrated, and it's also based on the cognitive part of our mind and thinking that our intellect is in control, and even sometimes people get to the idea of reparenting themselves. Well, who is reparenting whom? Your intellect is reparenting your child. That's the problem, is your intellect has been your parent, and it's been negative. And so the things that are based on willpower and intellect just are not going to work. Now, a lot of self-help stuff can result in awareness and real positive change, but until one is willing to go behind that curtain of forgetting, and go more deeply into it and let compassion develop. Compassion, let me put it this way, anything in our adult life that's yucky, that's unwanted, unproductive, self-sabotaging, if you were to trace it all the way back in that person's life to their childhood, you would find something very sad and poignant there. Something heartbreaking happened for the little child. And then over time, that child turned that into a kind of a dark rule and a law, a dark law, you might say, and is living that law out in their life as if it's reality. And so we need to cultivate the capacity for compassion toward ourselves and others. And I want to take just a moment to talk about the importance of compassion. Compassion, co means with, and passion really means, in this sense, suffering. And passion, until maybe 50, 60 years ago when it started being, passionate this and passionate that, and passion became something really good and really emotional. In the, Judeo-Christian philosophy, passion, as in the Passion of Christ, was always about suffering. And so compassion is the ability to be with suffering without trying to change it, just being present to it. I'm sure that every one of your listeners here, Marni, has had the experience of someone being there for them the experience of your something's terrible and you have a friend who's just being there with you. And I'm sure that we've all been there for other people. So this being there is most difficult to do toward myself. And instead, what comes to mind right now is the T-shirt that I remember seeing about 25 years ago. It was a skull and crossbones and an old pirate ship. And then it said, the sign on the T-shirt said, "The beatings will continue until morale improves."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You probably saw that.
Yeah.
And we can all laugh at that and see its absurdity. That's kind of what we do to ourselves. We beat ourselves up. We call ourselves names. We find fault with ourselves. And we think that by beating ourselves up, we're actually going to get better. And it just makes everything worse. So how do we develop this ability to be with ourselves when we're low, when things aren't working, in a way that, is present to it without losing ourselves, without falling in a deep, dark hole, or without just dismissing it, saying, "Oh, that's BS. I'm really a good person," or, just trying to talk our way out of it. How do we be present to ourselves? And so the reason self-help strategies don't work is that in order to change, one needs to go to the depths of compassion where the pain actually is and re-experience the pain. Now, re-experiencing the pain on its own is not enough, but it's part of it. And self-help, a lot of it is designed to get us out of our pain, to have strategies for denying our pain, for escaping from our pain. And I'm just going to say one last thing here, which is, in a funny way, our entire culture, our consumer culture, is designed around self-help. I mean it in this way. If you drink this Coca-Cola, you're going to, or whatever the drink is, alcoholic or otherwise, you're going to have a beautiful, positive, shifting mood. If you buy this car, if you look this way, if you wear these clothes, all of it, if you go to this vacation spot, all of it is designed to make you believe that if I do this, I will be happy. And we know that, for example, a lot of the self-help movement is designed around you can make more money if you shift your attitude. And, that's for people who don't have enough money, and they're looking for a shortcut. And it's money is not based on attitude. If it was, then only wonderful, beautiful, loving, humanitarian individuals would be wealthy. And that's far from the truth. So money doesn't make you happy. We all need money. We all require it to get along and all that, but it's not the source of happiness. So the source of happiness dwells within each human being as a spiritual dimension of self, which is resonating in harmony with life as it truly is. And many of us have had glimpses of that, where you seem to step into, it's almost like a parallel universe or a parallel experience in which everything is okay just the way it is. And even the faults and problems are just the way they are. And in that place of emotional connectivity, that's compassion. It's being connected. So, the cultivation of compassion is fundamental, which is also why I think mindfulness is coming into such vogue, because it's a way for us to watch our emotions, watch our mind, to notice what we grab onto, and to perhaps loosen the grip of some of those things.
Yeah, I think one thing that I just really want to highlight is so important, for high achieving women, is that we spend a lot of time thinking that if we beat ourselves up, if we're hard on ourselves, that's actually the way we're going to motivate ourselves, right? Like,
Right.
I need to really just, treat myself crappy because, that way then I'll do it differently. And, it doesn't really help. And this whole notion, which is so brilliant, what you said, is that, we have this whole rule that like pain is bad. But what Raz just pointed out is that, really to get to the cause and then get behind it and beyond it is to go to that point, to not acknowledge feeling in as a negative, but to be with yourself in that suffering. I don't know where it comes from, but what we resist persists. And so all of those quick fix remedies sometimes end up taking us further away from happiness and joy and love. So, yeah.
And Mark, that axiom you just said, what we resist persists. There's also another one, which is what we can feel, we can heal. And so it is willing to go into those feeling states. But Marni, I think it would be an opportune moment for me just to describe very quickly what we call the Quadrinity Model.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Hoffman says that there are 4 dimensions of self in every human being that are occurring simultaneously. One is our physical body, obviously. Then there's the intellect, figuring things out, explaining things, synthesizing truths, discovering all kinds of strategies and ways of moving in the world. Then there's your emotions, which tell you, do I feel safe? Am I comfortable? Do I belong here? And then there is your spiritual self. And the spiritual dimension of yourself knows your path, knows everything, almost what's coming, and knows how to respond to any situation in your life. And so the pain is in the pain body, or the suffering is in our emotional self. And it gets reinforced by our intellect, which makes up rules of behavior around it. But it's our intellect our emotional self, that experienced these things, these negative, painful emotions in our childhood. And then buried them and called them love at the time. So has a way of continuing spinning around in a vicious cycle and coming back to that negativity, all in the name of having more love as adults. But then there's the spiritual self, and the spiritual self is open and free and loving and spontaneous. And so it's not just a matter of feeling the pain and releasing our attachment to it, but it is also a matter of connecting profoundly with our spiritual self. This is the part of wholeness. So not only does, in the Quadrinity Model, are the 4 aspects of self, but through the work of the Hoffman process, one learns to have one's spiritual self lead your life. And that is a completely different experience, because then there is wholeness, not 4 parts to yourself, but a whole self.
I think that is, especially for women, I think this really just rings so true, because we get so, and all people, right? But, I think we get so focused on having intellect running the show, and emotional self is just, I always say, it's not an asset, it's a pain in the ass. Women, we just are like, if I love too much, I get burned. If I do too much, so we just button it up and we just completely ignore body. We don't even realize that we have this inner wisdom, self, intuition. If we hear it, we ignore it. And so I think really the takeaway that I would hope that you have really from that sort of model is, that there's so much more to you than just that voice in your head that says, work harder, go faster, get skinnier, don't fuck it up. Because God, that relationship with yourself is like your worst nightmare when you don't really live into the wholeness of the joy and the spontaneity and being able to tap into that. So with that, before we wrap up, I thought that it would be really cool if you might take us through a brief experience, to sort of help us connect in some way to really the truth, to authenticity, and really support our listeners in knowing an experience of who they really are.
Wonderful. So I want to open it up. We'll do it briefly. It will take a few minutes, but what I want to speak to is that gratitude is an opening into your spiritual self. So when we get into this dimension of self, which we call your spiritual self, and it's not about religion, it's about a depth of spirit that's inherent to each and every human being. When you get into that place, you know the truth and you can live it much more freely. much more powerfully. And so gratitude is an opening into that. You'll notice that negative emotions localize in your body. Or you get something in your gut, you get a pain in your chest, you feel a tightening, your shoulders hunch, something happens. There's always a contraction somewhere in the body. Whereas positive emotions fill your body. So joy fills your body, love fills your body, compassion fills your body. And so moving into these, I'll call them spiritual states, allow us to be connected to life itself in a holistic and complete way. So I'm going to use gratitude as an opening into the self here, into the spiritual self. And whatever you're feeling when we do this, what you feel, the lift and the positivity, I wanted to note that is a quality of your spiritual self. So I'm going to ask everyone listening to close your eyes and get quiet and just follow the natural rhythm of your breathing. And now imagine that you're breathing through your heart. That is, that your breath is coming in and going out through your heart space. You'll have a little somatic sensation there. Now recall a time when you experienced deep gratitude. Recall a time when you experienced deep gratitude. Just let a memory bubble up and re-experience it. Go through it in as much vivid detail as you possibly can, as if you were there and it's happening now. Notice the sensations in your body, the emotions you have. Perhaps the other people are there. Or if you're with your dog or your horse or something, you'll notice that. Perhaps it's in nature. But just recall a time when you experienced deep gratitude and re-experience it. And now go back to breathing through your heart. Recall another time when you experienced deep gratitude. Let it bubble up, and once again, re-experience it. Kind of milk that experience for all you can get out of it. Really feel it. Now, staying present to that emotion, how you're feeling right now, go back to breathing through your heart. Staying present to the deep gratitude you just felt. And just say inwardly, I'm willing for this gratitude, this experience, to spread throughout my entire body and beyond. And let it spread, let it fill you. And then say, I am going to live today from this experience. I'm stepping into the day from this depth of this experience. And now staying present to your inner state. Slowly open your eyes. That's it. Beautiful.
Wow. That was so amazing. And what I really enjoyed and appreciated about that is something that's really important is that connecting into this space, like go on a date, do that experience and go on a date, right? We don't have to, well, it's great to sit and meditate for 45 minutes and, put on your favorite music and your sexy panties and dance around. Like that all is really awesome. But if you can have a practice like this where you can connect in and experience this part of yourself. And like Raz said, really feel it all into your body and then show up for people in your life, in your day, on a date from that space. I mean, your results are going to be dramatically different. So thank you for giving us all an opportunity to step into that part of ourselves.
Marni, I just want to say that breathing through your heart connects your head and your heart together. Your heart is in your body, so you're connected to your body. So you become pretty highly integrated. And as you recall gratitude or positive emotions, that accesses your spiritual self. So this is a highly integrating, those deceptively simple little visualization. And if we had more time, I'd ask people to breathe through your hearts with their eyes closed and recall something they really appreciate about themselves, something they love about themselves. And then to recall something about the person that you're going to be going on a date with, something you really appreciate and value and love about that person. Maybe it's their laughter, something, and you move into that. And when you move into that, the depth of self-appreciation, self-love, and connect with what you appreciate and love about another person, that also opens the doorway for that connection to really happen.
That's the bombdiddybomb.com. And I just want to be very specific because I know you ladies are going to all write in and say, like, what if I don't know that guy? What if I just met him online? Well, appreciate the fact that he put time into his profile. Appreciate the fact that he reached out to you and he actually asked you out and made a plan. Appreciate that he, called when he said he would call. Like there's the lesson of how does this apply to me rather than well, that doesn't apply to me, right? Is going to make this a really, really effective tool. So I love that. Thank you, Raz.
Yeah. And it builds on the small things like appreciate punctuality.
Yeah. But
you don't have to go for the whole, blue whale all at once, just go for the small fish to start with, huh?
Exactly. Because dating is one step at a time. One yes at a time. Raz, thank you so much for being here. I just am so grateful for your work and for your passion for really helping men and women change their lives. And I think that, when women will say there's no quality men out there, it's blaming the condition, where their age, where they live, and sort of focus on that. I think what it's really important to do is that all the possibility really comes from within and actually getting to the root. And that's really where the possibility is. And so thank you for getting us on that path. So I appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome, Marni. You're the greatest. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your appreciation. And ladies, hey, don't forget when you go out there, date with dignity. And we'll see you back soon in the dating den. Bye-bye.